You're listening to the Artist Athlete Podcast, episode 86. This podcast is dedicated to Circus. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey friends, fans, and enemies. I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete Podcast and the founder of theartistathlete.com. It's late August. The days are getting shorter, the nights are getting colder, but it's still August, which means it's still summertime, which means I am still over at Circus Talk in the podcast tab. If you found me from Circus Talk, welcome. If you don't know about Circus Talk, they are an international inclusive forum. They have job postings. They have information, news, not just podcasts, but articles, blogs, all things circus. So if you're listening to these episodes every week and you're like, man, I wish I had even more circus in my life. I wish I knew what was going on everywhere all the time. Go to circustalk.com and go check it out. The Artist Athlete Podcast is funded through listeners and listeners only. And I want to take a moment to thank every single person who has subscribed to the Artist Athlete Podcast via Patreon and is giving even the smallest, even $1 a month. You guys have helped so much, help this podcast grow. And while you guys help cover the month-to-month expenses, I'm still paying out of pocket for things that come up, such as a really cool interview that's happening very soon with a very special guest. And it's going to require a lot of extra help. We're getting a new sound person in who is solely doing the live recording for this episode. We're getting a translator because the person I want to interview only speaks Russian and French, and I don't speak either of those languages very well. So we're hiring a translator to do that. My producer, Hannah, I have to pay to book everybody and have everybody's schedules come together. And my amazing sound editor, Allison, who made it all happen, even though she's all the way in Portland, Oregon. We have this big team. We have this amazing project that we're all super invested in, and none of it could happen if I didn't have my Patreons. So thank you so much. If you want to become a Patreon and contribute not just to the month-to-month budgets, but I would really love this podcast to grow to have like a little savings account. So when we wanted to splurge on big episodes or fly in guests, or maybe I could fly to Ibiza and interview Guy Liberté or something crazy like that. That's kind of the next step up we want to go, in addition to video content and a lot more. But that can't happen at the current budget we have. So go to patreon.com/theartistathlete. Sign up. You can give as little as $1 a month. Every single dollar counts. You can pay through PayPal. You can put it on a credit card. It's totally secure. You can quit anytime. I'll give you a sticker. Go to patreon.com/theartistathlete. My guest today is Jon Stranks. Jon is a 25-year-old acrobatic gymnast and hand balancer who started at the age of 6. He's been world and European champion twice, won Britain's Got Talent with the group Spelbound, appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres Show, and has performed around the world with 3 different Cirque du Soleil shows. At the time of lockdown, he was on Messi 10, the show about the soccer player. He is now hanging out with his girlfriend in Canada. As far as I know, he's still there. This recording happened on May 24th. It's the last of that kind of batch that I did in May, and I'm still catching up on. He does one-on-one online handstand coaching and is currently creating a platform to teach handstands through video tutorials, along with follow-along videos to improve the strength, flexibility, and fitness of his students. Here's my interview with Jon Stranks. Cool. Johnny, what do you go by?
My professional name would be Jon.
Well, Jon Stranks, welcome to the Artist Athlete Podcast.
Thank you.
We'll start recording now. Yeah, you can say thank you or fuck you or whatever. I always start by asking people to introduce themselves, kind of say who they are and what they do. So, Jon
Mhm.
Stranks, who are you? What do you do?
So, my name's Jon Stranks. I'm a professional acrobatic gymnast and hand balancer. I'm 25 years old and I'm from London, UK.
I wanted to have you on because you're also a flyer. Yeah, you do some banking and other things like that.
Yeah, that's correct. So, acrobatic gymnastics is the sport that I grew up with, but now that I'm performing my role as a professional as a flyer, more specifically a banking flyer.
Can you explain a little bit what that is?
So, as a banking flyer, I'm working with a team of 14 people, ranging from different sizes and male and female. I'm basically being thrown in the air by two people at the same time or more, and then they'll catch me again, and we'll do a series of throws and catches. And in the air, I'll be doing various acrobatic stunts and trying to look nice at the same time.
Try to point your toes. Respect.
That's it.
Cool. So you started with acrobatic gymnastics. How old were you when you
Gymnastics, yeah.
started?
I was, I believe, 5 years old when I started, so I can barely remember the beginnings of my journey, but it started with just a kind of preschool gymnastics kind of class where I'd learned to kind of climb through tunnels and climb up ladders and jump up things. And the teachers at this class, they said to my mother, "Oh, your son, he has so much energy and so much enthusiasm for all of this physical movement. You should really put him into a like something like a gymnastics class to use his energy to learn some skills and just to practice. And this is too easy for him. He'd be very good at something more advanced." So that was the initial kind of idea. So they took me to a gymnastics school in Ashford called Spelthorne. And yeah, I started from the very bottom. I was very young, maybe 6 years old when I started this professional journey. And it went on for, well, it's still going on now. But that's more or less how it started.
It's crazy because, I mean, a 5-year-old, of course, it feels like a lot of them have a lot of energy and are running around and would need some place to put that. But I think about gymnastics training requires a ton of discipline. Were you like a disciplined little kid? Like what? How did you have the patience to be consistent and learn some of these skills at a younger age? Like, do you remember any of that?
Yeah, so at the beginning, I think I definitely had fun running around and being a kid in the classes. But over time, I was taught discipline through my coaches and I was required to act in a certain way. I think just being in a very regimented routine where I was training, I can't remember how often I was training when I was that young, but at least in the up and coming years, I was training maybe 20, 25 hours per week. So with that amount of time and training, I started to take it more seriously. And I was given, I had very good coaches and I was given praise for anything that I did good. So I think having that praise, I had the more professional mindset and trying to do it right and having a good attitude. So it was definitely with the help of the coaches and my parents as well for me to have the discipline in order to, develop and succeed.
And then at what age did you or did they know that you were going to be a flyer? I remember one time I was in San Antonio, Texas, and my boyfriend at the time and I would go to, there were these Bulgarians who started a sport acro gym in San Antonio somewhere. And we would get like Chipotle and sit on the bleachers and watch them train these like incredible kids. But I always wondered like how
Yeah.
do they know? Because when you're like, when you haven't hit puberty yet, you're all kind of the same height and weight. And so how do they know how to train you to be a flyer or supporter?
Yeah, so in the beginning, everybody's so young and small that we're not able to kind of pair up and throw each other because we're not grown up enough. So in the beginning phases, we are kind of just learning the same kind of skills. So it could be handstands, basic gymnastics, a bit of strength work as well. And then at a certain point, I can't remember how old it was. I must have been maybe 7 or 8. That's when they decided to pair me up with someone who was a bit older than me, who was able to kind of pick me up and do very basic gymnastic elements. And yeah, I think they just decided that I was already so small and so petite that I was going to be great as a flyer, because obviously, the smaller you are, the kind of more potential you have to, be thrown in the air or be held more easily. And I stayed around the same height since.
I asked the coach once the same thing, and he said that they would look at the parents. They'd be like, if the dad came in and he was 7 foot tall, they wouldn't even bother training a flyer.
Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. My mother is very small, like myself. We're about the same height now. My dad is just a bit taller. But that definitely, I would say, plays into it as well. The kind of genetical makeup of the parents and the kids, and how how fast and how tall you think they're going to grow based on their parents. So that definitely makes sense. And I never really thought of it that way. But I guess, the coaches kind of made a decision based on my parents' genetics as well.
People talk about trust all the time, which I think is such an interesting dynamic in this kind of work. Like, obviously it's professional training and you're all there to do a job, but was there any kind of thought to how well you connected with your porters as far as just like being friends?
So when I was younger and doing the more competitive side of gymnastics, my partners, be it one guy or 3 guys in the team, they were 5, 6, 7 years older than me. At that age, when you're 10 or 15 years old, those years make up a huge difference, personality and kind of potential as friendship. So it definitely was more there for the gymnastics. And obviously we had a great time at training, but like socializing afterwards, they were old enough to go out and go to nightclubs and bars, whereas I was still, just a young teenager. So we had that difference. But now I've grown up and I'm old enough to kind of socialize with them. And also with my current team, they're a few years older also, but there's definitely more of a connection between us. We can go and socialize and do things together, which is different to how it was when I was competing.
So you had your gymnastic career, and then at what point did you shift into circus?
So I made the shift in, I think it was around 2012, 13. I was preparing for the World Championships in 2010. We made an agreement beforehand with me and, I was working in a men's 4 at the time, so it was me and 3 other guys. Well, we made an agreement that this World Championships would be our last competition, and we would retire from competing after the competition. And actually at the same time, or a few months prior...
Wait, I have a question.
Sure.
Is that normal? Like, when you have a 4 pair, say, like, is it normal that you would stay together, and then if one person wanted to continue on, could they?
Sure, yeah. So I had this option to stay on, but I think I wanted to finish on a high. So I knew this was going to be my last competition. So I kind of decided that I'd had a good run competing and this would be the last one. But yeah, I've seen partnerships where one person wanted to finish, one person wanted to stay, and they just have to kind of, they go their separate ways and they have to find a new partner if they do want to stay.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted your story. I was just curious about the etiquette around that in sport acrobatics.
It's all good.
Anyway, so you guys all 4 decided that was going to be your last competition. You wanted to end on a high note.
Yeah. And prior to the competition, we actually formed a group called Spelbound. We participated in Britain's Got Talent, which was pretty crazy. So it started off as just a small group of gymnasts, including myself. And we entered the competition. And, this was very, very unexpected. But we actually went through the competition to the live show, to the semi-finals. And then we ended up winning Britain's Got Talent in 2010, which was so unexpected and yet so amazing at the same time. And we actually won the Britain's Got Talent series. I think it was just a month or 2 months before the World Championships. So we had this whole surge of kind of the performance aspect and, entering the entertainment industry just before we went to the World Championships. Yeah. And of course, I mentioned that we knew this is going to be our last competition. So it added a new dynamic to our team, and we kind of decided to go to the World Championships and then continue performing with that group. around the country and making a living from the performing.
Yeah, and I would assume like if you win Britain's Got Talent, like that's a pretty sweet thing to have on your resume. Probably a lot of performing opportunities open up for you after that.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I love how you're like, yeah, like, duh, like that's such a dumb question. But I mean, like, I think that it's really different than someone who's trying to get their start as a performer or someone who doesn't have that kind of exposure from the beginning.
Definitely. We were, at the pinnacle of our competing career. We actually went on to become world champion, and I was already world champion a few years before that, and European champion as well. So, that's something that I had achieved in the sport, and the team was also filled with other members who were also world champion and European champion and such. So it was a very qualified team, and we reached this, very high level within the sport. We're not known for it. Like acrobatic gymnastics is pretty unknown and unheard of. People may have seen it or heard of it, but to the general public, not many people know about it. So we knew we were a very strong team, and we had some of the best acrobats in the team, some of the best acrobats in the world even. We had no kind of recognition. So we knew we were good, but we didn't know how the public were going to perceive it. And yeah, it ended up being pretty good. We never expected to win. It happened for us. So it was, crazy to have that kind of reception from the general public, but we had no idea, or we definitely didn't expect it to end that way.
Yeah, I think it's funny when you're training in a gym for hours a day, years upon years, like the things that you do seem obvious or seem like, yeah, of course I can do that. I've spent 5 years learning to do this.
Yeah.
And then when you take it out on the streets or put it on stage, all of a sudden you get this like applause for it. And you're like, oh yeah, maybe that is kind of cool.
Definitely.
I don't know if you've had that experience as well, but I'm still like really interested because I've had other gymnasts who then make the transition into circus on the show, and they have different kind of reflections on this. And I'm interested in yours because you also do hand balancing. It's clear that you love it. You're quite accomplished at it. And I'm wondering if you had to do extra training to become like a circus hand balancer versus your gymnastics career.
Yeah. So if we take a step back in the sport of acrobatic gymnastics, there's actually a lot of handstands. I was pretty good at them, but I was only ever good on one hand and only ever taught on one hand. So I have a dominant side. And the reason why you're only taught on one hand is because you don't get any extra points or such if you do it on the other arm. So there's no need to. So I joined Cirque.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
I joined Cirque being good on two arms and one arm. It's still, limited in the various shapes that I could do.
Which is your dominant arm, your right arm or your left?
Yeah, my right arm.
And are you right-handed?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
But for two-handed stuff like cricket, I'm left-handed. I'm weird like that. I don't know why.
Okay.
But yeah, I joined Cirque, and I kind of took it upon myself to learn some new skills. And I figured that, Cirque is such a high level to be at. And I thought it would be stupid not to further develop myself. So I decided to take up, hand balancing more seriously. And I started to learn all of this new stuff on my left arm. And it was very interesting to begin with because my right arm was very strong and very dominant, and I could do so many things on it. But my left arm, I could do nothing. So, I was almost starting from scratch. So I had to teach myself all on my left arm. And, it took a couple of years to get to just a good level.
What was the performance work like going from gymnastics to circus?
It's a very good question, actually. And it's something that I had a little bit of trouble with at the beginning, because if you've ever seen gymnastics or gymnasts, when they finish a trick, it's so pristine and, so calculated, and they have to present it in a very polished way. And I really had trouble with it because on stage, it doesn't look so good. And, you might be representing an act which reflects a certain image or a story, and you have to make every single piece fit. And sometimes, finishing the trick, you'd have to characterize that as well. So, I was so used to finishing it with very clean lines, and I was so kind of stuck in my gymnastic kind of habits that I had to kind of break out of them a little bit. Also, another thing is that in gymnastics, you have that one moment to shine when you're competing, and you fight to save the trick if it does go wrong, and you kind of correct yourself if you make a mistake. But on stage, when people are watching the show, they don't know what to expect. They don't know what you're going to do. So I had to get out of the habit, and it's still something I'm fighting with now, where if I make a mistake, you have to continue and stay in character, not to break emotion, keep telling the story as best as you can. And I definitely found that hard to begin with as well, because I thought going to the stage every time, I would kind of think of it as a competition, and this is my one chance. But when you're doing the show day in, day out, you have to you can't put that kind of pressure on yourself, because it's not good for your mental health. You need to be relaxed going into performing.
Did you have like mentors or people kind of help you with this, or was it all like you doing video and self-reflection? What was this process like?
A mix of that, actually. We had coaches within Cirque, within my team. We'd often try and point things out if something needs to be fixed. But actually, a very good tool is to watch back on the performances. So every show is recorded, and after the show, you can go and watch it on the TV screen backstage, and you can kind of see like how you did, if you made a mistake, or if you need to correct something. So that's a very good resource to make any changes if you need to, or to check and see if you're breaking into an old habit or if it's going well.
I always wonder like what people did before they could video themselves. Like
Yeah.
Do you know? Like I think about like circus performers even like 20 years ago couldn't do that. It's so crazy to think
Yeah,
about.
they definitely didn't have the luxury of all the technology that we have these days. I have thought that about myself as well, especially doing handstands. There's no way of seeing yourself unless if you have someone telling you what it looks like, or someone is videoing it. It's definitely great to have like all this technology around, so you can try and achieve the look that you want to achieve.
Do you use any special technology, or just your phone on your camera?
No, I just use my mobile phone, and I'll probably set it up against something so it stays in one place. And I often like to film from different angles to try and get a different perspective, and it's good for technique to have a look-see from every single angle to make sure everything's in place and where it needs to be, and to see if there's a problem or why that's occurring.
So you mentioned earlier, I don't know if I'm going to cut this out, so I'll say it, that you have done a couple of TV shows. You've done some like big things that you weren't allowed to swear on. Were you allowed to swear on the Ellen Show?
I can't remember. I don't think I did. Some of it was edited out. I know that.
Okay.
And that was pretty funny, actually. So I did the performance.
Yeah, what was that like? Yeah.
I did the performance on the Ellen Show. And then straight afterwards, I'd finish the act and I have to go over to the sofa. And then we'd start talking. And I've forgotten the aspect of being out of breath, because I would always rehearse the act and I'd be fine to just, sit down and take a sip of water afterwards. But obviously I didn't have that chance. So I finished the performance and I went over to the sofa and I was gasping for air. I felt so unfit. And she started asking me questions, and I had so much to say. This is my big opportunity to say who I am and tell my story and get my name out to a very wide audience. And I couldn't talk properly for the first couple of minutes because I was so out of breath, and I was just chugging down water to try and normalize my voice and try and get my words in. Which is hilarious. But
actually, when I watched the clip, that was something that I was actually very impressed by. I was like, man, they didn't even give him a break. He had to just like put his shirt on, walk back over and like start talking. Like, oh my God.
That's because the first 2 minutes was cut out. And it was a shame as well, because the questions, were about my background and how I started, and, they were very interesting, and I had a lot to say for them. But in the end, they didn't make the cut because my voice was so, distorted and just not fluent and not good enough to make it on TV, which I understand. I felt quite embarrassed afterwards. I was like, damn it, why did I not think of this, or, give myself a minute to catch up and then answer the questions.
That would be really hard. You're on the Ellen Show. Like, you want to do good.
Yeah.
Is she nice? What's she like? I've heard she's not nice.
Yeah,
This is me just being gossipy now. I guess.
this is I've seen a little bit on social media and all the stuff that's come up recently, and I've had quite a few people ask me what she's really like. I met her, but it was so brief that I can't really give like a good answer. But what I can say is that when we did speak, she was very nice to me. She was very appreciative of me making it onto the show, and very congratulatory and what I've achieved and the hard work that I put in. So what she did say was very nice. And, like we didn't go and have like a beer after the show or anything like that. It wasn't like that. It was,
Sure.
very professional. Yeah. She has her stuff to do. But the interaction that, we did have on set and backstage was very positive.
Before the great pandemic, you were on Messi, is that right?
That's correct.
How was that? That show looked so dope. Can you talk a little bit about it for the audience who doesn't know?
Sure. I've been with Cirque du Soleil now for 6 years, and I've done 3 different shows. I've done Kidam, Septimo Dia, and the show I'm currently working on before the pandemic is Messi 10. This show is a new idea by Cirque to try and target a specific audience, obviously Messi fans. And it was...
And he's a football or soccer player.
Yeah, for those who don't know, he's one of the best football players.
It's an American audience. So
yeah.
I gotta throw him a bone. Yeah.
So yeah, it was great to represent, such a huge icon in the sporting world. And, it's always a great privilege to, work for Cirque and to have the opportunity. It's very different to have or perform in a show that's based around one person or, in fact, a sporting icon. As you can probably imagine, the show is largely about football, and it represents football in a certain way, but it also ties in different elements of his life and our lives. So it represents family, friends, training. So it's not just a story about Messi; it's more of a journey.
And what's your role in the show?
So I am a banking flyer in the show. I also do a segment of handstands as well. They saw me doing handstands during the creation, and they were like, okay, we need that in the show. So I was like, cool, sweet.
Oh, nice. So you were just kind of like training off to the side, and they were like,
yeah,
get on stage.
Yeah, so...
Nice.
The cast of Messi 10, it's a very talented bunch, and we often have certain talents that are not being used in the show, and they always want to try and have as much talent as they can on stage. So this is another way of incorporating some more moves and skills.
You were saying it's more than about football, it's about family and friends. What is the Bankin act about?
Yeah, so our act is about strength. That's the name of the number. It's not referring to strength as in lifting weights. It's referring to the strength to, be knocked down once and then get back up again. It's, that fight or willingness and the determination to get where you need to be to, achieve a certain goal or to break a record or etc. So the story is the flyers. So myself and another guy and 2 girls, we are the person trying to achieve that goal. So on stage, there is physically a goal and there's a ball in front of it. We walk on stage and there are these 8 or so guys that come out and they're dressed in a different costume. And they represent, the struggles and the hardship that, Messi has had to go through, and maybe some people in the audience as well. So we're kind of representing himself and the people watching. And we are the ones, the flyers are the ones that have to try and reach the goal with the ball and score. And obviously these guys are trying to stop us. And that turns into a lot of acrobatic throws and struggles.
And what are the guys, your porters, the guys who are throwing you? Did you know them before? Are they like old school? I picture them as like old school Soviet bloc, like porters. I don't know why I have a really antiquated idea about this, but who are they?
Yeah, these guys, very familiar with Cirque. I've worked with them now for 6 years. Okay. A couple of guys have changed contracts, but most of the original teams remains. So I know them pretty well, and we've been working together for a while. That we have a good connection on stage, and it's very familiar to work with them. They're mostly from Russia, Ukraine, So that's definitely an interesting element. You know, I'm used to working with an English team, and this is my first experience of working with somebody who doesn't speak English as their first language.
Do you, I don't even know if this is like common practice, but do you guys like evaluate like, oh, can you throw me a little higher? Can you give me a little less? I don't know, like those kinds of interactions. Do you find there's like any issues with that culturally or even like linguistically?
I'd say it works out pretty well because we're both very experienced in our field. So we often have a good understanding of what we're doing right and wrong. Obviously, sometimes that's not always the case. You can't know what you're doing wrong all the time. But more or less, the kind of explanation or the reason why could be as simple as, somebody needs to throw a bit more or a bit less, or I need to jump earlier or later. So in terms of translation, it's not really a huge problem. A couple of the guys in the team, they speak very good English, which I'm very fortunate for, because if they didn't speak much English, then it would make the whole process a lot harder.
You mean you don't speak Russian fluently?
Not fluently, no. I know a few words.
And so what are you doing now, aside from being stuck in this beautiful country of Canada with your beautiful girlfriend? What are you up to now that obviously Cirque is not in operations at the moment and there are no performances?
So I'm mostly just trying to keep myself sane and healthy and happy. I think that's the uttermost important thing, which I think a lot of people are, having to deal with as well, is just to keep in good spirits. But I'm also using this time to, work on some things that I might have not been able to if I was on tour. So I'm doing a lot of online one-on-one handstand coaching at the moment. So
yeah, how's that going?
It's going really well. I've had quite a few clients or students from around the world, actually, and it's just great to have this knowledge and just to share it amongst so many people wanting to reach a high level, or for those who are just doing it for fun. And it's just great to have a purpose at the moment and to kind of share this knowledge that I've attained over so many years of training.
Did you ever coach before?
I've done a few like one-on-one in-person lessons before, but this is the first time I've taken it very, very seriously. So when I have a new student or client, or dealing with it in a much more professional way, before it was more kind of just for fun, just trying to help them along their way. But now I take it as more of a professional, or in a professional way.
And how do you find it over the internet? Like, I don't know. I would assume handstand coaching would be really hard because you would want to spot the person or like give corrections manually. And you can't really do that when you're on video.
Exactly, yeah. It can be a little bit frustrating at times not being able to physically help the person or correct the person. It does have its limitations in that sense. But it's made me think of it in a slightly different way. How can I achieve that same goal with doing different exercises? So it has kind of opened up this other door of me like researching and trying out different things to try and ultimately help the person, even though I'm not there. So it's definitely been a bit of a challenge to come up with it, but I think I've got a pretty good system in place now where I can actually teach someone how to handstand through a screen, which is a pretty cool thing.
If listeners want to find you online to get handstand coaching, where would they go?
So they can go directly to my Instagram. That's where I'm most active. You can find me at Jon Stranks. And I'm also about to launch a website as well. So if you want to go and take a look at my website, that'll be jonstranks.com. So you'll find some more information on there, not just about the handstands or the lessons that I'm offering, but also more information about my career as well, if there's anything that's missing from today's interview.
Congratulations on the website.
Thank you.
That's always a time-intensive activity to build a website.
Oh, it is. It is.
Anything else? I want to wrap up and ask you one more question, but I feel like, is there anything else you wanted to add that I'm missing from your life story as an accomplished flyer / hand balancer?
I'm trying to think. I've been pretty fortunate to have some crazy experiences in my time as a gymnast. I think maybe just touching on a few kind of performances that I've done even before Cirque with Spelbound. So one of the
Why the name Spellbound?
kind of
Sorry to interrupt.
no,
Where did that come from?
it's a unique name, and it derives from our gymnastics club where we used to train. It was called Spelthorn, which is spelt with one L, which is why Spellbound is spelt with one L as well. So we took kind of a piece of our origins into the name. So yeah, with Spellbound, I was able to do some pretty awesome performances and gigs. We performed on the Raw Variety twice. That's actually a prize given to the winner of Britain's Got Talent. But we were asked to come back again to represent kind of the best of Britain's Got Talent. So we did that along with dance group Diversity, opera singer Paul Potts, and various other artists. So obviously being on that stage was huge. And, you know, the other artists that were performing in the show, famous singers, actors, it was just great to be on the same stage as them. I think one of our favorite performances, or definitely one of my favorite performances, was a show that we did. It was a charity show called Help for Heroes. And this was taking place in Twickenham Stadium. And it was a concert. You know, we had big names there, such as Robbie Williams. But this was to 70,000 people live. This was incredible. This was just after we won Britain's Got Talent. And it was huge. We never performed in front of that many people before. And we were so used to just, you know, an audience of 300 people when we were competing. So to go from 300 people to 70,000 was incredible. And again, to be on stage with so many other famous and successful artists, singers, actors, it was just, you know, incredible. And it was a great cause as well. So that was definitely one of the grand highlights from the Spellbound era.
Is it, pardon my ignorance, is London known for having like a very good sport acrobatics scene? You know, like I think about these places in the world that are kind of like known for these hotspots of sport or other things. Does London have that reputation, or were you guys just this exceptional quad of guys who succeeded in this way?
Yeah, it's a very good question, actually. So back when I was competing, the hot countries were the UK. We were very, very strong, and still are. The other strong competitors in the world would be Russia and China. So these were the main three that were really competing for first, second, and third place at the World Championships or European Championships. But that's definitely changed in recent years. Since leaving the sport itself has changed a little bit. I've also lost touch with it a little bit as well. I'm more focusing on my performing career now than the actual sport. But I have noticed that the countries that are fighting for the first, second, and third place has changed. The UK is still right at the top and competing with the best. And Russia and China have kind of gone down a little bit. They used to be, you know, the hot shots, but now countries such as Portugal and Israel, some of the best, and if not the best. So it's definitely changed and shifted. And I think that has partly got to do with the popularity of the sport in these countries as, you know, risen, and thus creating better coaches and a better support network for the gymnasts.
And then the other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about Spellbound and your performances, you were saying that this was actually very close to when you were competing at the World Championships. Is that correct?
Just 1 month or 2 months apart.
Were you doing the same skills in your performances on stage that you were going to do in the World Championships? Like, how were you training for such a huge event at the same time that you were performing?
So on Britain's Got Talent, the viewer had a taste of some things that we could do, but they were not shown a lot of tricks that we could actually do. It's because in the studio, we were very limited because we didn't have the correct resources to fully utilize our skills. So what I mean by that is we would normally perform on a gymnastics floor, which is sprung and it's very, very soft. And we were obviously not allowed to have this in the studio that they were recording Britain's Got Talent. And so the best that they could do to, you know, help us out was to give it this thin little mat. And, you know, we were flying sometimes 5-10 meters high. So landing on this mat would have been a huge safety hazard and very, very dangerous for us. So we were not able to do all of the high tricks that we were, able to do on a professional gymnastics floor. Also, the studio is just not high enough, believe it or not, but it's actually quite small. And you have microphones and lights hanging above your head. So we were quite almost limited in a way in regards into what we could do.
But it sounds like the limits were more about your materials, not so much your body. Like you didn't find that you had to like be more conservative to risk injury or anything like that.
It was just because we didn't have the correct equipment, like landing on the floor from 10 meters without the fully sprung floor would be very dangerous, and one of us would surely get injured.
I wouldn't recommend that. Yeah, sure.
But yeah, as we were kind of enjoying our win of Britain's Got Talent and the weeks after it, we had to prepare for the World Championships. And a lot of viewers or listeners won't know this, but winners of Britain's Got Talent go on tour just afterwards. So we had won Britain's Got Talent, and the finalists, including Spelbound, we were all on tour for about a month or 6 weeks around the UK, doing performances day in, day out. So we had this great success, and now we had to go on tour for 6 weeks whilst preparing for the World Championships, which was insane. Just our preparations alone for the World Championships are very, very intense. But to now be on tour, doing shows day in, day out, traveling around the UK, it was manic and was very difficult.
Do you think it made you better?
Yeah, so it was very tough to prepare for the World Championships whilst doing these shows. But I will say that I do think it helped us because we were doing some of our tricks on tour that we were going to do at the World Championships. And it enabled us to, try out these tricks in front of a large audience each day. And it became more comfortable for us. In the sport, you have this one moment to shine. But now we had the opportunity to do these tricks day in, day out in front of an audience under stress. So we had that advantage of, being more confident going into the competition. And that definitely helped us. But just the whole preparation for the World Championships was very stressful in itself. We were doing the show at night, traveling to the next city in the morning, doing 3 hours of training to prepare for the World Championships, and then doing the show later at night. So I can speak on behalf of everyone that was in the team that period was very, very challenging.
Did you have it in your contracts to find a gym in every city? How did you get the equipment necessary to train for those hours when you were moving so much?
I think we just we had to ask permission for local gymnastics clubs to see if we could train there, and I wasn't part of the negotiations, but we were invited into a few places, and we were very grateful to train there and to train in their gym. And we had a few friends around the country just through the sport itself, and we were fortunate enough to train with them and just say hello, because there were a lot of mutual friends training in these gyms, and it definitely helped us prepare better for the up and coming World Championships.
Nice. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I have one last question that I always ask all of my guests, which is, what advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
I would say commit, but commit very smartly. So I kind of had a plan B and a plan C along the way, and I was really trying to focus on plan A. But train hard, train smart, try and plan a little bit for years to come. Really explore your vision and which direction you want to take, and just do the correct training. Reach out for different coaches and different resources, and just to try and help you on your way.
Nice. Johnny, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
That was my interview with Jon Stranks. I always think it's so fascinating when I have acrobats who started in competitive sport versus artistically. They approach the work very, very differently. And I think I don't want to say that one is better than the other, but I do think it's interesting the discipline and the practicality that these people approach their work with as if it's, the job first. And there's a lot of adjustment that has to go into then being a performer. Jon talks about how he didn't even really realize that these tricks, how they would be received or if they would be impressive to an audience when he was on Britain's Got Talent. He talks about being shocked because he knew that his team and his teammates were some of the best in the world, but day in and day out, they're practicing these tricks. So he had no idea how the public was going to perceive it. And I really loved how he talked about this fighting to save the tricks, how in gymnastics, because it's scored, because it matters so much, even if you under rotate or do something else stupid, I don't know, you're really going to fight to save it so you can you can salvage every point. But in circus, the audience doesn't really know when you mess up unless you show that you've messed up. So to be a good performer, you have to realize at some point that yes, the skills are important, but they're not the most important thing on stage. I thought that was a really interesting insight that he presented. As I said at the beginning, and as we said in the interview, Jon is offering handstand lessons online. His website is www.jonstranks.com. That's JONSTRANKS, Jon Stranks. On Instagram, he's at Jon Stranks, and on Facebook, he's at Jon Stranks as well, and there are links in the bio. For aerial training tips and inspiration in all of my online offerings, I'm doing some really fun workshops all August, and they will be up for a while. You can go to my Instagram account is at _artist_athlete. I'm on Facebook, The Artist Athlete. My website is theartistathlete.com. And if you love what you're listening to, if you want to support, please, please, please go to patreon.com/theartistathlete and sign up. Give a little bit of money. And if you're a baller on a budget, you don't have much money to give right now, it really does help the podcast if you subscribe and leave a rating and a review. I know right now I'm on Circus Talk, but I won't be come September. So I want you guys to make sure you don't miss an episode. So subscribe on whatever platform or go visit me on theartistathlete.com. Thanks for listening. I'll talk at you next week, friends, fans, and enemies.
The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi everyone, this is Allie Cooper, owner and coach at the Radical Movement Factory in Santa Cruz, California. I love supporting the Artist Athlete podcast and the amazing community Shannon has created here. I teach rope and fabric and have a circus conditioning app available on iTunes called Cirque Plus. You can follow me on Instagram at AllieCooper_, and if you find yourself in California, come say hi.
Hi, I'm Leah. I hate conditioning, so I created the ABCs of Fitness, a fun, full program of active flexibility, body weight, and cardio with personal daily check-ins to motivate you wherever you are and whatever discipline you do. Join our next 19-day check-in challenge and slide into my DMs on Instagram at ABCs of Fitness.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell, and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and swing and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon. Hello all. thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the city, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we got a place for you.